Here's what happens when political power shifts hands in Maryland, and why the drama that's unfolding might surprise you. The torch has officially been passed, but make no mistake, this transition is anything but smooth sailing. When U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen stepped into his new role as Maryland's senior senator, he wasn't just filling Ben Cardin's vacant seat. He was inheriting a political battlefield that's about to get a whole lot messier. Last Friday, at the Maryland Association of Counties Conference, Van Hollen delivered his inaugural town hall as the state's senior senator, a position that former Senator Ben Cardin held with steady hands until his retirement last year. But here's where it gets interesting. While Van Hollen's message echoed the familiar Democratic talking points we've heard for years, his delivery revealed something much deeper about the challenges facing Maryland politics today. The presentation could have been copy-pasted from any of Cardin's recent appearances. Sharp criticism of President Trump's administration, passionate promises to secure the new FBI headquarters for Greenbelt, and the usual reassurances that Democrats love to serve up to their base. Political comfort food, if you will. But this is where most people miss the real story unfolding here. When Prince George's County Executive Aisha Braveboy opened the question and answer session, she cut straight to the heart of what's keeping Maryland officials awake at night. Her question about protecting Maryland assets from federal whiplash wasn't just about the FBI headquarters. It was about a much larger pattern that's become impossible to ignore. Van Hollen's response revealed the full scope of this political chess game. He reminded everyone that Maryland's selection for the FBI headquarters wasn't some political favor. It came after years of rigorous analysis and head-to-head competition with Virginia. The decision was based on merit, logistics, and long-term strategic planning. But then came March, when Trump essentially threw all that careful planning out the window, announcing his intention to scrap the Maryland location because he preferred keeping the agency in Washington, D.C. The plot thickened in July, when FBI Director Kash Patel made his announcement that sent shockwaves through Maryland's political establishment. The agency would be relocating just a few blocks from its current Pennsylvania Avenue location to the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center. This space had previously housed the Agency for International Development, until Trump abruptly shut down that entire agency earlier this year. But here's the controversial part that nobody wants to talk about openly. Is Van Hollen's defiant stance realistic, or is he setting up Maryland for an expensive political battle that they're destined to lose? This fight is far from over, and we're going to deliver that FBI headquarters to Prince George's County, Van Hollen declared to the crowd, his voice carrying the kind of conviction that either inspires confidence or raises eyebrows, depending on your perspective. His broader critique cut even deeper into the heart of modern governance challenges. It doesn't matter which party you belong to, Van Hollen explained. Elected officials across the board recognize how damaging it is when they successfully secure federal grants or programs, only to watch them get frozen or completely terminated without warning. The senator painted a picture of a federal system in constant flux, seesawing back and forth as we speak, as he put it. While Congress had previously shown bipartisan support for Maryland's position, Van Hollen expressed frustration that Republican colleagues weren't maintaining that solidarity when push came to shove. His solution to virtually every challenge raised during the town hall, from immigration reform to disaster relief cuts to the erosion of trust in federal data, boiled down to one thing: getting Republicans to break ranks with Trump. But is this strategy naive optimism or political realism? That's the million-dollar question. Our Republican counterparts need to fulfill their constitutional responsibilities, Van Hollen stated bluntly after the town hall concluded. When the Republican Party on Capitol Hill operates in complete lockstep with the president and refuses to provide any meaningful checks and balances, we've got a serious problem on our hands. And this is the part most people miss. Van Hollen's criticism isn't just about policy disagreements. It's about the fundamental structure of how our government is supposed to function. But let's talk about what really gets people fired up in Maryland politics: energy policy. And boy, did things get heated. The Thursday session, titled "Powering Maryland: What's Next for the State's Energy Future?" turned into an unexpected political showdown that perfectly illustrates why energy discussions tend to generate more heat than light. Maryland Energy Administration Director Paul Pinsky decided to take direct aim at PJM Interconnection, the organization that manages the regional electric grid serving Maryland and roughly a dozen other states. Here's where it gets controversial. PJM's executive director, Jason Stanek, was sitting right there in the audience when Pinsky launched his attack. Talk about awkward timing. Or was it calculated political theater? Stanek had just finished presenting PJM as a fuel-neutral, nonpartisan organization that operates with complete objectivity. His explanation was textbook corporate speak. We don't build generation facilities, we don't construct transmission lines, we don't own any generation assets, and we don't own transmission infrastructure. Unlike traditional utilities, we operate without shareholders, we have no stop price to worry about, and we don't generate a single penny in profit. But Pinsky saw this as his opening to deliver what might have been a premeditated political haymaker. He argued that while PJM might claim fuel neutrality, their grid remains heavily dependent on fossil fuels, and their connection queue is clogged with renewable energy projects, including solar installations and battery storage systems, that can't get online fast enough. You can claim to be fuel neutral all you want, Pinsky fired back as Stanek visibly disagreed. But when your policies systematically favor fossil fuels, that neutrality claim becomes meaningless. Pinsky's critique went deeper into governance structure, highlighting what he sees as a fundamental democratic deficit in PJM's leadership. Although PJM was originally designed to help states efficiently move electricity across regions, the current structure gives state governments virtually no meaningful representation, he argued. Look at their board of governors. You won't find a single person who directly represents state interests. But you'll find plenty of people representing power generators and individuals with close ties to the utilities that transport electricity. Does that sound like balanced representation to you? Stanek didn't get an immediate chance to respond, but when an audience member asked about keeping Maryland-generated energy within state borders for local consumption, he mounted his defense of the PJM model. The beauty of maintaining a large, interconnected grid system lies in the economies of scale it provides, Stanek explained. You can distribute your power throughout the entire network to achieve maximum efficiency and optimal pricing. If you start isolating sections of the grid and making them smaller, you're obviously going to have fewer options and reduced resources available. But here's the question nobody wanted to ask out loud. Is this really about energy policy, or is it about control? And who gets to make the decisions that affect millions of people's daily lives? Meanwhile, Maryland's Department of Health is finally starting to fill the leadership vacuum that's been plaguing the agency after a series of high-profile departures by top officials. Perry Briskin officially started her new role as Deputy Secretary for Healthcare Financing and Medicaid Director this past Monday, stepping into the position previously held by Ryan Moran, who departed last week for a state position in Washington. By Friday, Briskin was already front and center at a MACO panel discussion, explaining how the recent congressional budget reconciliation bill will impact Medicaid coverage throughout Maryland. When we discuss federal budget cuts, we're talking about massive reductions to the overall Medicaid funding structure, primarily because Maryland receives a disproportionately large share of federal dollars to operate the program. She explained to the audience during her comprehensive 10-minute overview of how Medicaid functions within the state. Her message carried both urgency and uncertainty. Any cut to any component of Medicaid represents a cut to the entire Medicaid system. We're committed to advocating aggressively for the program and ensuring everyone maintains their coverage, but we're going to need your partnership to make this work. While Briskin is new to the Deputy Secretary role, she's not new to the department. She's been serving as Chief of Staff for Maryland Medicaid since January. Before that, she held the position of Senior Advisor to the Director of Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program Services at the Centers for Medicare Medicaid Services. But here's what makes her appointment particularly significant. Briskin will be tasked with navigating Maryland through the implementation of work requirements for Medicaid recipients, along with managing substantial program cuts in the coming years. She'll also inherit the ongoing challenges surrounding Medicaid waivers for individuals with developmental disabilities, issues that have been festering without adequate attention. So here's the real question. Is Maryland's political establishment prepared for the battles ahead, or are they simply going through the motions of familiar political theater? What do you think? Are Van Hollen's confrontational tactics the right approach for defending Maryland's interests? Or should the state be looking for more collaborative solutions? And when it comes to energy policy, do you believe PJM's claims of neutrality? Or is Pinsky right to call out what he sees as systemic bias toward fossil fuels? Share your thoughts, because these debates are far from over, and the decisions made in the coming months will shape Maryland's future for years to come.